Today we're talking about the last group of tribes of North American Native American tribes, and we're talking about the Northwest and the Arctic tribes. So there's a few different attachments in here. We have some book pages that we're going to read from the book. We also have a note sheet here that you're going to take your notes on, and then a worksheet that you will complete as well. We'll read the book pages together, and as you're doing that, you'll fill out the note sheet, and then when we're all done, you will complete worksheet 19 as your homework. So remember, if you're wanting to follow along in the book, if you click there, I usually have to click view and then zoom to 100%. But we'll go ahead and open up the note sheet. And if you noticed on the instructions, it said that you guys are going to have to create your text boxes. So I'll walk through again how to create the text boxes to fill in the notes. And then again, always make sure you click edit presentation, edit in browser. It always takes my computer a little bit to pull that up. It takes a little bit for it to load. And then when we get there, then I always click either view or this drop down arrow to get to view. Click zoom 100%, then you can see it a little better. And as we're going through, so you can see here up at the top is where we're going to talk about the people of the Northwest. And then down here is where we'll talk about the people who lived in the Arctic and the subarctic. And so as we're taking notes, remember we have to click insert text box. Remember when you do that, it automatically pops down here. So you'll need to come down, grab it, and then pull it up there. You might have to scroll and pull it up. You click here, highlight it all to erase it, and then you'll put your answers there. And you'll have to click a new one for each item. So the first thing we're going to listen for as we're reading, so we're going to listen to what the land was like in the Pacific Northwest, what groups lived there, and what their important resources were. So follow along as we read. So if you see here on the first page, it's talking about region of plenty, which matches our heading here. We're going to read about the land. The Northwest Coast, also known as the Pacific Northwest, stretched between the Pacific Ocean and the mountains to the east. It included parts of what are now Oregon, Washington, and Western Canada. So this is what the land is like. We're listening now. Cool ocean winds brought on heavy rains to the region, so forests grew tall and thick. These forests and the rivers that ran through them were filled with fish and other animals. So the way the land looked is it was rainy, there was mountains and forests and rivers. So on your note sheet, you're going to put down information, about how it looked, how it was rainy, how there was mountains, how there was rivers, how there were forests. So writing that down on land. Now we're coming to the groups. We're going to be listening for the different groups that lived there. So here we see people of the Northwest Coast. Many Native American groups, such as the Kwakiutl, the Makah, and the Chinook, lived in this region. So here we have three names of groups that lived there. So next to groups, you're going to put those names. So you're going to come here, write down the names of the groups. If you need to pause the video, you can pause the video, type in the names, and then continue listening. Important resources. So we're going to figure out what these people used. So those three groups, what they used in that land. What were their resources? Instead of farming, the people of the Northwest Coast met their needs by fishing and hunting and by gathering plants and nuts. The coastal waters were an important resource, and salmon was a staple food for most groups. Remember, staple means a main food, so the main food that they ate was salmon. Whales were an important resource too. Whales supplied not only food, but also fat, which could be melted into oil to burn lamps. Most groups, including the Kwakiutl, captured only whales that had been stranded on the shore. In contrast, the Makah hunted whales at sea in large dugout canoes. These boats, each made from large hollowed out log, carried up to 60 people. So there's three different resources that were very, very important to these people. So the salmon was one resource that was important. The coastal waters were also important because that's housed their food. And then whales. So they had three important resources. They had whales, salmon, and the coastal waters. So if we go back to this page, we can see them in their canoes hunting the whales. So they're using their harpoons and spears to get the whales, and then they would bring them to shore. So this is the Makah group that would go on a whale hunt. The other group would wait till one maybe died and washed up on shore or got beached and stranded, and they would get it that way. Now we're going to the next page, 84 here. And as we're reading here, we can see resources and trade as the heading, which matches here. And so we're going to read about what an important resource was, another one to this area for trading and what they used out of the land. The giant trees that grow in the forests of the northwest coast provided many groups with wood for houses, tools, and boats. Makah villages stood near the Pacific Ocean, a common location for many Native American homes in the Pacific Northwest. So we can see another very important resource for them was the giant trees. So on your note sheet, you'll put giant trees for another important resource because they were able to make many, many different items from those trees. So here's where you'd put the important resource. And now we're going to talk about the type of shelters they lived in, what they were like, and who all lived there. Family shelters. The shelters of the Makah were like those of the Iroquois, but larger. Makah longhouses had a frame made of wooden poles, which could reach 60 feet in length. The walls and floors were covered with wide boards. So their houses were also the longhouses. So that was the type of shelter they had, was a longhouse. They're just like the Iroquois in the eastern woodlands. So even though they lived on complete opposite sides of the country, they still used their resources similarly. They both made longhouses out of the trees that they had. All the members of a clan or extended family lived in the same longhouse. Grandparents, parents, aunts, and uncles, and children lived together. Each person in the clan held a specific rank. Clans made important decisions about village life. Clans also taught young members songs, stories, and wood carving skills. So their shelters are the longhouses, and the whole family lived together. And that group of people, the extended family, is called a clan. So here we were talking about the type. So you're going to put down the type of house that we just said that they were living in. And then who all lived there? Who all lived there? And if you notice, this should be T-H-E-R-E, there. Who lived there? Now we're going to talk about the dulles. So we're going to read a little more about what else they used the wood for, that important resource. Then we're going to talk about the dulles. Wood was so useful to the people of the Northwest Coast that they made almost everything from it. Dishes, spoons, and other utensils were made of wood. They also carved totem poles made of wood. These tall posts usually showed one or more characters that were used to tell a story or to welcome visitors or traders. So you can see here's some totem poles. You can see they have different characters and animals. And a lot of times they would tell the history of that group of people or the history of the clan. And so these totem poles were made from the really tall trees, and they were used kind of to welcome people as they came. People traveled long distances on the region's waterways in order to trade. Trading was a large part of the region's economy. So economy is the way the people of the state, region, or country use their resources to meet their needs. So how the people use the water and the animals or the wood or the different things they make, how they use them to meet their needs is the economy. And trading between other tribes was a big part of that. The dulles. The best known traders among the Northwest Coast Indians were the Chinook. The Chinook lived at the mouth of the Columbia River, which they controlled from the coast all the way to the dulles, about 200 miles upriver. So they controlled a river all the way from the mouth of the Columbia River. They controlled the Columbia River all the way to this dulles. So what is the dulles? The dulles was a center of the trade network. because many groups gathered there, but the different languages they spoke made communication difficult. So as people were trading all amongst themselves, there's a place at the center that they all kind of met at, and that was the Daulis. That's where everyone met to trade. But since there were so many different groups and tribes, there's a lot of different languages that were spoke, and it was hard to communicate with the other tribes what they wanted to trade or what they were looking to get. However, the Chinook were able to profit from trading at the Daulis because they figured something out. The Chinook, they developed a unique language for trade. It was made up of Chinook words as well as words borrowed from other Indian languages. So they took their words plus all the words of the other people who were there, and they made a new language. This language allowed them to barter or exchange goods on behalf of two groups who spoke very different languages. So they became like an interpreter for each group. So they would go with the two groups and they would help the two groups trade, and then they would get a little bit of the profit or a little bit of money or whatever was being traded for helping. So they figured out real fast that, hey, if we can learn all these languages and kind of morph them together, we can benefit from that. So we'll go back here. So the Daulis, that was a trade center, a trading center. It's at the center of where the trade network was. And the best known traders were the Chinook. They were the ones who figured out, you know, hey, let's control the river leading there to the Daulis. And also they figured out that language of how to help people trade. And then that way they could get paid for helping too. And now we're going to talk about a potlatch. What is a potlatch? We're going to go over here. And we're now over here. A potlatch. Trade and natural resources made many Northwest coast groups rich. So because there was a lot of different natural resources like animal and water, trees, there's many different things, and they were able to make lots of stuff with that. And then trade, they were able to make a lot of money. One way they expressed their good fortune was through a celebration known as a potlatch. A potlatch was meant to show wealth, but then also divide property among the people. Potlatch means to give. So they would all get together with their foods and different items that they had, and they would kind of show off what they had, but they would also kind of share with each other and give to each other. Historians think that the Kwakatuli, who lived along the coast of what is now Canada, helped develop the potlatch custom. The potlatch was a celebration with dancing, food, and speeches. So the potlatch was a celebration to show and share wealth. So it's kind of a big party to show, hey, this is what all I have, but we're also going to share with each other. And that's the Northwest. Now we're going to go on to the Arctic. So this is more the northern Canada, up near the Arctic Circle, North Pole area, lands of the North. So we're going to talk about the Arctic and then the subarctic, which is right below them. So these guys are right close to the North Pole, and this group is right below them in northern Canada and in Alaska. So we're going to now go to the next page. Lands of the North. So this is kind of what we're thinking. This is more the northern parts during the winter, and you can kind of see how they're dressed. So the lands of the North. As we're reading, we're going to listen for two groups that lived in the Arctic. We're going to listen for what the resources they had and what their houses were. The Arctic is the region near the North Pole. This land is mostly a flat plain where the Earth stays frozen year-round. One Arctic group, known as the Aleut, lived along the coast of the Aleutian Islands. And one group closely related to the Aleut were the Inuit. These people lived in what is now Alaska or northernmost Canada. So the two groups we had were the Aleut and the Inuit. So when you think of Eskimos, you know, a lot of times this is, you know, the group you're thinking of, Aleut and the Inuit. So life in the Arctic, we're now going to talk about their resources that they had. Because of the climate, few plants could grow in this region. The Inuit and the Aleut hunted foxes, caribou, and polar bears. They also used harpoons and kayaks to hunt seals, walruses, and whales. A kayak is a one-person canoe made of waterproof skin stretched over wood and bone. So some of the resources that they used, so some of these resources were foxes, caribou, polar bears, seals, walruses, and whales. Now, these resources were limited, so nothing was wasted. The people caught seals not only for their meat, but also for their skins, which were made into clothes and tents. Oil, which if you remember from previous reading, was made from the fat of the animals. Oil was used to light and heat houses, so that way they could have light inside the house and heat up the house. Even the bones were used to make tools. The Aleuts lived together in large houses with beams made of whalebone and walls made of sod. And if you remember, the Plains Indians would also use sod, but instead they would use sticks to make the frames, so they had wooden frames, whereas the Aleut had whalebone frames. And then they would cover it in sod, which is the grass with the dirt still attached to the roots. During the winter, some Inuit lived in homes made of ice called igloos. Other Inuit families lived year-round in tents of animal skin or in sod houses. So we have three different types of homes that they might have lived in. They lived in sod houses, they lived in igloos, but they also lived in tents. The extended family was an important part of Inuit and Aleut society. Inuit groups, for example, were usually loosely formed bands of 60 to 300 people, made up of several families. These families came together to make important choices for the good of the group. The people hunted and traveled together, often sharing seal meat in order to survive. So they worked together, they looked out for each other, and because they worked together, they were able to survive better. So now we're looking here for the subarctic. Where was the subarctic located? What group of people lived there? What resources they used? Then we're going to talk about how farming was not possible, but what was the cause of farming not being possible? Life in the subarctic. South of the Arctic is the subarctic region of North America. It stretches from what is now eastern Canada to now what is now Alaska. So the place that it is, where it is Canada and Alaska. People of the subarctic region, such as the Cree, relied on hunting and gathering to meet their needs. The Cree lived over a wide area across what is now Canada. Trees provided the Cree with wood to meet their needs. So the group of people who lived there was the Cree. And one of their big resources they depended on were trees. Since the long winters kept them from being able to get food by farming, they used bow and arrows to hunt game. Some Cree groups divided the land, so the people had an area to hunt as their own. Other groups roamed freely. So I want you to think about the effect. So farming wasn't possible. Why wasn't farming possible? So long winters kept them from being able to get food by farming. So the cause of not being able to farm was the long winters. It didn't get warm enough for the crops. It didn't have long enough days with sun. So the cause of that was the long winters. So now that we have this filled out, we're going to go back to your assignment. And now you're going to come down here and fill out worksheet 19. There's 5 questions. They're multiple choice. You're going to read the question, but first you'll hit edit presentation, edit in browser. When that pulls up, then you'll be reading through each question and selecting which answer is best. So we're going to click view. 100%. Now, if you read the directions in the assignment here on Teams, you know that you're also going to have to create the text boxes for this. But the way we're going to do it is, so which objects did the Northwest Coast people not make from wood? So pay attention to this. Which one did they not make from wood? Dishes. Well, they made dishes from the wood. Spoons. They made dishes from, or spoons from the wood. Pottery. I don't think that's what that was made from. Or utensils. Yeah, they made utensils from the wood, so I know they did not make pottery from the wood. So I can know that people did not make from wood pottery. So I'd click Insert Text Box. And remember, it always pops up down here. So I'm going to click and I'm going to grab it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first highlight this. I'm going to make an X. I'm going to shake this down and I'll put it over here, over that. Now, what you could also do is you could type in the chat to me. You could say number 1 is C, number 2 is whatever the answer, number 3, whatever the answer, 4 is the answer, 5 is the answer. You could also print this paper off, fill it out, take a picture of it, send it to me, or you could write the answers on another piece of paper. Like on another piece of paper, you could put 1, C, 2, whatever the answer, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. And then send me a picture of it that way. Whatever works for you, or you could do it here on the computer with the text boxes as well. So make sure you fill out the complete note sheet, and then you're going to fill out worksheet 19 here. Once you complete both of those, make sure you click close, click the turn it in button, and you're good to go. If you have any questions on how to complete either the note sheet or the worksheet, message me on Teams, send me an email, or send me a message on Remind.